Welcome to Season 4 of the Changing Earth podcast with Sara F. Hathaway, blending survival fiction and fact to bring you entertaining education that will help you dream, survive, and thrive. And now, here's your host, Sara F. Hathaway.
Hi, and welcome back to the Changing Earth podcast. This is episode number 137, Season 4, Episode 13. We got some exciting stuff going on right now. I have redone my original book, Day After Disaster. Just gave it a little love, a little attention, just went back, did some re-editing. I changed the beginning around just a little bit to try and get the reader more involved in the beginning of the story right off the bat. So exciting things with that. So that's going to be reissued as a second edition. What I also included in that book, 5 bonus chapters, which is the beginning of how the family gets to Las Vegas. So the bonus chapters are going to be available. I'm going to give them away as a free gift for signing up to my newsletter. That's at www.author.sarafhathaway.com. So they have their own cover and everything. It's the Lost Vegas years, and that's going to be part 1. And I'm going to issue those as a series of short stories, which will eventually become that book. So that'll be a lot of fun to follow that along. So head on over, get signed up to my newsletter, and you're going to get those 5 chapters for free. And then if you are already a member of my newsletter, already subscribed, and you want to get those 5 chapters, just go ahead and shoot me out a message. It's easy enough to figure out how to contact me on my website, multiple avenues to do that. So just go ahead and contact me. Let me know you want those 5 bonus chapters, and I'll get them over to you. What else do we got going on? I'm still getting ready for the Self-Reliance Expo. My books have taken up a big part of me getting ready for this event because I just wanted to make sure everything was sharp and clean and all my books look really professional. So they're ready to go. And the Self-Reliance Expo is coming up March 23rd and 24th of 2018. So it's on our doorstep. It's going to happen and it's going to be a whole bunch of fun. I hope to see you out there in Mesquite, Texas. Last week on the Changing Earth podcast, we got to visit with Master Sergeant Bennett, and his story went a new direction as he became a federal fugitive along with the whole mercenary force. So we'll have to see what happens there. But this week, we're catching back up with Vince and Erica. They're headed back down to the hospital in Houston, and we're just going to catch back up with them and see how they're doing with trying to rescue these people. So this chapter really brought up an interesting note as far as the elements that first responders have to deal with in a real life situation. These, the weather presents many, many challenges to them. And so I thought it was a really cool topic. And here to talk to us about that today is Sam Bradley. And we'll go ahead and introduce her at the halfway point. For now, without any further ado, let's go ahead and get into Battle for the South. Chapter 13. The hurricane bore down on Erica and her crew of ragtag volunteers. They were drenched, and the afternoon began to chill as evening approached. Double timing it down the road, it wasn't long until the hospital was back in sight. Erica remarked to herself how quickly they had made it back as they hurried through the doorway. She looked towards where the patients awaiting help were. Erica watched the man next to her run through the doorway. Suddenly, in slow motion, his body continued forward while his head slid backwards. Vince jumped in front of Erica with his pistol drawn and pushed her to the side, but he hesitated. The attacker took a hostage and was now threatening to kill her. Erica shuffled backwards, pulling her pistol as well, and glanced around the room. She was sickened to see dead bodies everywhere. "The end is here! God is coming to take us all!" the man yelled as he held a long knife to the lady's neck. Erica was horrified to see the assailant was the same man she and Vince had carried from his room. "What have you done? We told you we'd come back," Erica screamed. She got to her feet and tried to draw the man's attention. Vince started to slowly circle around the man. He was waiting for his opportunity to take this guy out. "No one comes back. God told me. No one comes back. God told me to take them with me," the man screamed wildly. His crazy eyes were desperately searching Erica's soul. "We came back. Here we are." Erica was dumbfounded by his actions. This man had killed all the others. God's not talking to you. Fear is. The man was confused. He had never believed they would come back. He put his head down a little, and the knife backed off slightly from the lady's neck. Vince seized the moment, squeezing the trigger of his gun and shooting the man through the side of the head. The woman screamed in panic. Erica went and held the woman. Erica didn't know why the man had done what he did. The volunteers had followed her. They risked their lives to save these ailing people, and this man had killed them all. Erica stood with the woman catatonically as volunteers entered the hospital to check on the patients. They were all dead. Standing oblivious to the world, Erica watched a huge piece of wooden debris smash through the last pane of glass. As Kyle led the woman towards the door, the glass sparkled in the air behind them. Erica's glorious plan had shattered like the glass in the air. "Come on, Erica, we've got to go," Vince yelled, grabbing her arm and running into the street behind the fleeing volunteers. Erica looked back and watched the debris-filled wave slowly creeping up the street. Buildings shook like trees in the wind, swayed, and then fell into the floodwaters. Erica had never experienced wind and rain this fierce, and she struggled to keep her balance. The group huddled and helped one another fight the wind and water that threatened every footstep. Suddenly, a huge chunk of building fell, smashing a group of volunteers beneath it. Erica furiously tried to move the mass with the others, but there was no way. Her heart pounded. The water was now up to her shins. "We must keep moving," she urged herself. "Help them!" Kyle yelled, watching them walk away, but his voice was drowned to the wind, rain, and flying debris. "They're gone, Kyle!" Another young man shouted at him as he pulled on Kyle's arm. Relief washed over Erica as they spotted the buses in the distance. Running to them, the rising water threatened their departure. Prayers were said as they loaded into the vehicles. They didn't know exactly how many people had died in the futile attempt to save the patients. The driver sped away from Houston as fast as the bus would go. Erica looked out the window in a daze as the city crumbled along with her confidence. Vince returned from his conversation with Kyle in the front. He sat down next to her and couldn't help but notice her deflated demeanor. "It's not your fault, baby," he comforted her. "I know," she said absently. "You did what you thought was right," Vince tried again. "I know, Vince. I know," Erica mumbled with tears in her eyes. Vince held her tightly as she cried. She wanted to save those people so badly. She wanted to lead and claim victory. But it had all been for nothing, and God knew how many people had died because of her. Am I doing the same thing now, she wondered, chasing a dream, an idea that I think is right, and it's all going to blow up in my face? Except this time, my family's life is on the line. The mood on the bus matched Erica's. It was quiet and stunk of drenched people. Erica slept in Vince's comforting arms and awoke when they arrived back at the Austin camp. She roused Vince and they stared out at the rainy blackness. Ted Ferguson met the buses as they rolled in and the sullen volunteers unloaded. Upon doing a count, they realized they lost 6 people. The guy that was killed by the psycho and 5 more when the building crashed down. "What happened?" Ted questioned Erica. "One of the patients went crazy. I didn't even think he could get out of bed, but he did. He killed them all. And one of the volunteers," Erica explained coldly. She was still trying to process the emotions. "You tried," Ted declared. "A car will take you back to the governor's compound." Ted pointed at a waiting white vehicle. Erica didn't know what else to say, and Vince was ready to get a move on, get Nancy, and get home to his family. They quietly sat in the vehicle as the driver, obviously excited to be in the presence of the Moores, chatted energetically, trying to engage in small talk. The vehicle came to a halt in front of the residential buildings. The grounds were lit up like a Christmas tree, and people were still coming and going. Erica wished they could become invisible and get into their room unnoticed. She could tell by Vince's stare that he was thinking the same. They slowly climbed the stairs and entered the doorway, hoping it would be empty. "There you are, you bitch!" A woman younger than Erica seethed at her as she entered. Melvin was there as well. He stood beside her with papers on a clipboard. His presence seemed to be keeping this younger woman from attacking Erica, but he looked deeply concerned. Erica was shocked and in no mood for a conflict. "I'm sorry. Do I know you? Erica questioned as the young woman aggressed Erica, staring down at her. Maybe you don't recognize me without my father's brains blown up all over my face, she fumed angrily. The hatred in the woman's brown eyes disturbed Erica. What did I do? She wondered, studying her face. It was slim, and her features were perfectly set. The dim lighting in the lobby made her hair appear dark, but Erica guessed it was much lighter in the sun. But there was something about her voice and those eyes. Where have I seen those eyes before? Erica asked herself. You were in the cell, Erica blurted out. You killed my father, you bitch, she fumed. Erica thought back to the 9 long years that she and her family were locked up in a refugee camp. Going to work for the federal forces was the only other option they had to separating from their friends and being adopted out to live on some landowner's property. They had joined a federal rescue team. They were trained on how to salvage useful supplies and rescue people in disaster areas. On their first mission, Erica found a hidden chamber. A brash young soldier she was with opened the door without backup. The man in the chamber had the drop on the boy, so Erica pulled the soldier's sidearm and saved the soldier with the death of another. The man had been this woman's father. She had watched Erica pull the trigger, and then a bullet ripped through her father's skull. Erica had seen her again when Sergeant Bennett had taken Erica to the prison because it was a safe place to talk. He had shown Erica this woman, and the hatred and anger was just as present then as it was now. Remember me now? The woman hissed. Yes, and I can't tell you how sorry I am, Erica tried to explain. Your words are hollow to me. The woman's brow furrowed in anger. I want your life. She spat hatred through the air. Vince stepped up at the threat to his wife, but Erica stopped him. I wish I could explain, but there is no excuse. That day, your father or the soldier I was with was going to die. I made the choice for the soldier's life over that of your father's. And the kid was a complete ass that probably didn't even deserve it. I owe you a great debt, and if there's any way I can repay you, Erica tried to make it right. You can repay me. With your life. A fight, in the ring, to the death, the woman challenged. I don't want to fight you, Erica stammered. She couldn't comprehend how such a challenge would fix anything. Melvin, the young woman called upon him, to Erica's surprise. Under the law of the Republic of Texas, a family member does have the right to challenge the guilty party to a death match. Did you kill her father, Erica? Melvin questioned. I just said I did, but you don't understand. I was doing what I had to, Erica tried to explain. It doesn't matter. You did the crime. She has the right to challenge you. I'm sorry, Erica, Melvin explained. His muscular shoulders looked diminished as he drooped in anguish over the situation. Erica was dumbfounded. She had no idea what she could do to repair the damage. Emotionally, she was completely drained and stood unresponsive. And what if she doesn't fight? Vince stepped up, not about to allow his wife to participate in any kind of a fight to the death. You are banished from Texas and can never return, Melvin replied. Trust me, I tried to talk Cassidy out of this. We are going to lose a quality leader no matter who wins. Cassidy took her father's place as the Western Region Resistance Commander after he was killed. Enough, Melvin. This bitch isn't worth the explanation, Cassidy cursed her. Cassidy, I don't want to fight you, Erica reiterated. Don't do that. Don't use my name, bitch. Your life is mine, Cassidy demanded. No, it is not, and she is not fighting, Vince countered. We'll be gone in the morning. Vince pulled Erica by the arm and they walked back to the room. Today, tomorrow, next week, we'll settle this, Cassidy yelled at them down the hall. When the door was closed, Erica stared at Vince. Can you believe that chick? Vince asked her. Maybe I should fight her, Vince, Erica exclaimed. What in God's name would give you that idea? Vince wondered. We need these people, Erica explained. Why, Erica? Are they going to help us get to Vegas? Vince countered. Maybe. She couldn't argue any longer. Her brain was incoherent. Or maybe not. Vince comforted her softly. The mission is to get your mom and our friends in Vegas and then get home to Daniel, right? Right, Erica agreed. But what about the revolution and all the people we could help? You can't save them all, baby. And we can't do anything if you die in a ring over a choice you had to make. Vince pleaded with her to walk away. You can't save them all, he repeated to her. Erica stared at the ground, lost in thought. You're right, Vince. I can't save them all. I got my mind full of their talk. I'm not some hero. I'm just me, and I can't save the world. You'll always be my hero, Vince assured her, kissing her forehead softly. You know what I need? Erica asked Vince. What's that? Vince took her bait. A hug from Daniel. I miss him, Dax and Star, so bad, Erica explained. Me too. Let's just get this done and get home, Vince confirmed. Reeling from the day, Erica has this unexpected homecoming when she gets back to the compound. And you just have to wait and see how that's going to work out. Even though their efforts at the hospital were thwarted, weather can be a big problem for first responders, both present day and if we all get turned into first responders in an SHTF situation or a long-term survival situation, even a natural disaster type situation that's just short-term. So these are things you want to think about. You want to think about how the weather is going to impact your ability to help rescue somebody, help save their life. Here to talk to us today about the problems that weather gives first responders is Sam Bradley. Sam Bradley is a fire and EMS educator. She's an author, a DMAT paramedic, training officer, a former National Ski Patrol Outdoor Emergency Care Supervisor, and she's the co-host of the Disaster Podcast. This woman is working around the clock. She loves teaching people how to provide first responder services, and she is a busy, busy lady. But you can get a hold of her via the Disaster Podcast. She's always on there, and it's www.disasterpodcast.com. That's www.disasterpodcast.com. Before we have Sam on, let's go ahead and take a moment to hear a word from our sponsor. Today I want to tell you about a video that was just released by the man who notoriously predicted Trump's victory. He was one of the few who predicted Trump would win the presidential election, and he was even mocked on live TV for saying Hillary would lose. He's also notorious for predicting other major events, such as the financial fiasco in 2008. I'm talking about Jim Rickards. He's the nation's most vocal and intelligent proponent of the gold standard. Not to mention, he's a national security advisor, Pentagon insider, and financial warfare expert. Well, now he's making another shocking Trump prediction, one that he anticipates the fake news media will not cover. If you want to hear about this shocking prediction, go to www.author-sarahfhathaway.com/newsletter. This shocking prediction could impact your life and the lives of millions of Americans. Go to www.author-sarahfhathaway.com/newsletter and click on the show notes for this week's podcast. That's www.author-sarahfhathaway.com/newsletter. Hi, and welcome back to the Changing Earth podcast. Today I am here with Sam Bradley, first time being on my podcast. Sam, welcome to the Changing Earth podcast. How you doing today?
This is great. It's a little odd to be talking to somebody that isn't part of my podcast team, but it's kind of refreshing.
Right? An external interview. Yeah. So I had a lot of fun over on your podcast. So why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself to the audience and just give them a little bit of a tidbits about who you are and where they can find you.
Okay, well, I have a very long history in emergency medical services. I'm a paramedic. I've been an educator. We're in our 5th year of our podcast now, called disasterpodcast.com, that you can find. And without getting into too much detail, it's I've had all kinds of different jobs in EMS, from ambulance to fire department to ER. So I use it now in my writing. I'm working on a series of books that deal with fire paramedics and the lot. So at least when I find time to write. Right. In any case, yeah, I know you understand that.
Yep.
So you can find on social media under Sam Bradley or Sam Bradley 11, the disasterpodcast.com website. And we have a Facebook page as well on Facebook, of course.
Yeah, I had a lot of fun on the Disaster Podcast. That was cool, taking it from a different angle, looking at my books from more of the realistic side, although we hope it doesn't come to fruition anytime soon, that's for sure.
Oh, I hear you. Yeah, we really enjoyed that. And the one thing about our Disaster Podcast, we have our physician, Dr. Joe Hawley, and a real good mix of folks, including my meteorologist. But since we've kind of aligned with the prepper community, if you will, and did an actual, as you know, a live training with some of them, we've learned as much from them as they've learned from us, and that's really been a benefit. So your perspective was very valuable to us.
Isn't that awesome? Just, getting together with the info and just learning more and more. I love to learn, so I always appreciate opportunities like that.
Yeah, ditto on that.
So, Sam, today my characters, they are headed back to the hospital in Houston to try and rescue these patients that are stuck there in the hospital. And, we started thinking about it, and from a first responder point of view, the weather is going to make a big difference in your abilities. So we have all these people that are going to be thrust into a first responder position that have never been first responders before, and now we're going to add, weather and disaster scenarios to it to make their life a little bit more difficult. So I wanted to talk to you about that today.
Sounds good. Well, welcome to my life.
Yeah, right.
I didn't mention that I'm a disaster medical assistance team member, which is a federal team, and I've done a few of those too.
Yeah, sometimes I take a tough stance on what our federal government is doing out there, and so when you guys were all like, yeah, we're all federal employees, I was like,
I know how that is.
Yeah.
It's just like being medical responders in any other venue. It just gives us the opportunity to go nationally and internationally and be there as a team to help folks that are displaced or lost their meds or they need medical care. So we do the same thing we do in real life. It's just in a disaster situation. So
yeah, and that's incredible. Way to go, like getting out there and getting it done. I'm looking into CERT training and getting more involved in that myself, just because it is a really cool program that, we got to go rally up and help each other,
Well, and CERT is perfect because it teaches people not just first aid, but it teaches you how to do actual search and rescue and every skill you might need if it hits the fan in your little community. And, so you can get to people and then you know what to do with them when you get them out. And just, it's a whole gamut of good skills.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm excited about getting started on that as soon as I get a moment. So
yeah. Well, you have to let me know how that's going.
Will do. So what would you say is like your most challenging weather element to deal with when you are in these first responder type situations?
Well, I'll tell you, I have to come clean here that I actually talked to my meteorologist, who's a weather geek. I'm kind of becoming a weather geek too because of him, but I've got his opinions too, and he had some good ones. But, any weather extreme is a problem, especially when you're talking in terms of very hot or very cold, because we have these things called hypothermia, which is when your body temperature lowers, and hyperthermia, which is when your body temperature is too hot. And when you're in that situation, it's kind of a personal survival issue, and you won't be able to really help other people. So we do what we can to eliminate that. But interestingly, of all the things we could come up with, which we'll be talking about, precipitation, rain, is a big issue because it's physically tough to contend with. If you don't have the proper gear and you get wet, it's hard to get dry, even during the day. So especially if you're working in the field or a remote operation or you're just outside, wet clothes can lead you to being uncomfortable and even become hypothermic in moderate temperatures like 60 degrees. So it's a very uncomfortable situation. And clothing is actually your first line of defense against the elements. So you always want to make sure you have rain gear for this particular situation because it can make a big difference in your ability to function. And there's also kind of a mental piece to this, because nobody likes to be wet. And, you know, when it's raining, the skies are overcast and it could kill your morale, and, you know, you're less inclined to want to go out there and help people. So, you know, it's got a number of elements to it. But, you know, that's probably the most common as well, because it rains a lot.
Right, yes. So I was going to say cotton kills, you know, if you have cotton clothing on, once it gets wet, it sucks out like 80% of your body heat. So having gear that is not cotton underneath, so if you are getting wet, you're at least not covered in cotton that's going to suck out your body heat and cause more hypothermia.
And conversely, in a hot environment, you can get types of clothing that allow you to breathe and don't retain moisture. So that works both ways.
Yeah, it does. It really does. It pays to have, you know, a good poly blend or something like that. We learn all about that in California because we really do have extremes when it comes to, you know, you're up in the mountains. You might have a day where it's really blasting hot, you're sweating and everything, and then it gets down super cold at nighttime, and now you're freezing, you know, so it's definitely
exactly
a different piece. You know, I was thinking about it more of an angle of like, so when you're out there helping people, say you need to get out a gauze pack or something like that. Now you have cold, wet fingers that you're doing it with.
Exactly.
And all of your stuff, you're opening these sterile packs and whatnot. And now they're just getting wet and soaked on top of that. That's got to be a challenge.
Yeah, really good point. And we could do a whole show just on hypothermia. But that's one of the problems you run into is your manual dexterity becomes nil and keeps getting worse and worse and worse unless you change, you know, the situation. But, you know, another point here is when you have unknown and changing elements, and it just kind of reminds me, a couple of years ago, my cousin, who is a doctor in Denver, she works in ER. She says, you know, when you work in an ER, you got two things when a patient first comes in that go through your mind: sick or not sick, or bad or not bad. So she's sitting in her office in her house in Denver, and suddenly the screen got ripped out. And her first thought was, bad.
Right.
followed by the storm door and a few other things. So she said, "No, what the heck?" So she went outside, and she'd had some neighbors that had just moved, who's also an ER doc, and had a pile of cardboard there. And she looks around and she looks up, and the cardboard is going around in a circle. So I don't think it's too tough to guess what that was. Right, it was a tornado, which is pretty ironic. You know, Denver isn't actually in Tornado Alley so much, so it was kind of a surprise. Well, within minutes, hail started coming down. So she went back in the house, and she has a video she sent me of all of this. Within a few minutes, it looked like it had snowed. This is the middle of summer. And then the rain came. I mean, torrential to the point where people were getting trapped in their cars. Fortunately, the guy next door works for one of these disaster relief agencies, and he actually went out and rescued some folks that are floating away. So I always think of that story in terms of never assume you know what's going to happen next, because you may have a big surprise.
Yeah, we absolutely have weather just like that in the foothills. We were doing a big pig roast. And, you know, it was supposed to be a sunny, nice day. Sun's out in the morning. We get the pig all ready to go. Everything's on the spit. It's going. So then it starts raining. Then it's hailing. Then it looks like it snowed. Then the sun's back out. Then we're like, come on, you know, make up your mind. We have all these city people up at my house, women in high heels and stuff. I'm like, this is not good. First of all, I told you not to wear high heels up here.
That sounds like actually Colorado weather, but you know, up until 2 years ago, I lived in California, so I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, up here in the foothills, it gets a little exciting. I don't know. We don't have very big storms or anything, you know, super fun. But you know, I'm from the Midwest. I'm from Michigan, so like I like the big, huge thunderstorms. Really?
Yeah, I was born in Michigan.
I was born in Rochester, Michigan. Yep.
You're kidding me. I was born very close to that in Birmingham.
Oh, no way. My brother played hockey out in Birmingham like all the time. Yeah.
That's a trip.
Yeah.
We'll have to talk more about that someday.
Yeah, exactly. Wow.
Well,
and
I left when I was
and then you came to California, and now you're off again. It's almost the same story as mine. That's awesome.
Exactly. Well, what's left of my family lives here in Colorado, so I decided to transplant one more time.
Okay. Yeah, yeah. I've still got family kind of scattered out, and my mom's here. My in-laws are down in Texas, so we've thought about that move. But I love this
Too
little
hot,
foothill community. Yeah, yeah, and
too
so many
humid.
bugs. Oh my goodness, so many bugs. Like we were
Yeah.
out just shooting our bows, and you just get covered in ticks and stuff. I was like, oh no,
Ooh,
no, I'm good. I'll take my
I don't
California
do
foothills.
this.
Alrighty,
Really.
let's get back on track. So we are talking about different elements. So let's go through some of the different elements and just talk about ways we can kind of mitigate the dangers that are involved with them. So we talked about
Okay.
rain. Let's stay there for a moment just so we can think of anything else. If you're in the rain, you want proper clothing. What
Yeah,
else?
I have a couple of them we'll go through, but rain and flooding, know your area and what places actually flood regularly, even in moderate rainfall. Because what you don't want to do is drive through or walk through. People don't understand how little water it takes to knock you off your feet or to make your car float.
Yeah, it
So
makes
don't.
that little cushion of water that just whoop, and you're out. Yep.
It's like 6 inches,
Yeah.
and you're floating. So that's what I think about when I think of that Denver tornado. But don't drive through areas where you can't see the roadway. And besides the floating issue, you may have a situation where water has undermined the earth beneath the road, and then you fall into a big pothole. So conversely, walking and wading through floodwaters without an impermeable suit or even swift water training is not a good idea. This was a big issue in Katrina because floodwaters bring with it industrial chemicals and all kinds of nasty things. And I know people walking through the water there were coming out with actual burns on them from all the chemicals in the water, not to mention the exotic animals that might be floating around in there, like maybe
Yeah.
in California, you won't see too many alligators, but I mean, that's always an issue. Plus, you have mosquitoes and things attracted to the water. I mean, it's just a bad situation. So if you don't have to do it, don't do it.
Yeah, absolutely. That's one of the things that I included in my book, was with my research, I found out that if the dams broke up here, one of the dams that's in my book is not actually built. It's actually back on the table again, though. They're thinking about building it again. It's right on a fault line. It's absolutely ridiculous. Yeah, and this wave, it would be 100-foot wave aimed at Sacramento, and the amount of toxins and stuff that would mix all together would hit all of our plains where we grow all our food, like the rice and all that down there.
Mm-hmm.
And so you're just creating, mega disaster scenario. If you look at it big picture, which they don't usually do, they want to, push it through for one reason or another. So I'm just like, no, that water will be toxic mess. You don't want to drink that. You don't
Oh,
want to be
absolutely.
wading around in it. Yeah, it's bad
Well,
stuff.
kind of on a related note, we've been having a lot of earthquakes offshore, and more so than ever on the California coast. There's a tsunami danger.
Yes.
And so it's not a, chemical issue so much as just what the water can do. And it's kind of scary because that hasn't been the case as long as I've lived in California, but it's
right. We've
more the case now.
We've gotten really lucky for a long time now. The last big one was like that Napa. The last one that did damage was Napa a few years ago. But I mean, other than that, knock on wood, it's kind of just like a tick, 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 right?
That's it. And, the old proverbial head in your sand, most people, it happens to everybody else. It's not going to happen to me.
Right.
Well, guess what, folks? The earth is changing.
I grow like 15 new gray hairs every time if I have to go to San Francisco.
The title of your show is appropriate because the earth is changing, the weather is changing, and it's becoming worse and more harsh and affecting places that it didn't affect before, and people need to be aware of that and prepare for it.
Yeah, absolutely. That's why I'm just stressing prepared communities. I used to just care about me and my own, but now it's like we need everybody to be aware, and the more people that I can help, the better, because that's less that you have to deal with. If we had people prepared, we always look at this doomsday scenario of chaos in the streets and people being not nice to each other. Why? Why do we have to come down to that? We could be prepared now and helping each other out when we need each other.
And if other people are prepared, you won't be the only ones, worried about taking care of everybody else.
Right,
Maybe
the
somebody
target.
can take care of you.
Exactly.
So
exactly.
So on a related weather note, we have wind.
Yes.
So wind can really, we get some horrendous winds here in Colorado. Even these little mini tornadoes, if you will, that I never
Right.
saw in California. But wind obviously can affect your visibility, whether it's sand or dust or snow. You lose your ability to walk in it.
Would it be a good
driving in it.
idea? Would it be a good idea to carry some goggles or something like that? For cover,
Absolutely.
right? Yeah.
Absolutely. Even something that covers your whole body, depending on the season, of course. And I'll kind of get more specific about that later. But yeah, you don't want that stuff in your face and your eyes. So it affects your ability to walk. It can bring down trees and power lines and even tip over high-profile vehicles. So it's kind of a good idea to, look around. If you see overhead hazards that can affect your house or your property, check with local public works or whoever is in charge of that to mitigate those before there's a big wind that's going to bring them down on your house. And know the kind of trees you have. I know eucalyptus in California are particularly shallow rooted.
Right.
So in a big wind, those are the ones that are going to come down. So look around your house and see what dangers may be there if there's a high wind event.
And if you're in that, first responder situation and somebody's laying there, you run up to help them, like have a peek around, right? And make sure you're not under a branch that's going to come down on you or something.
Yeah, and on that note, it's an odd thing, and I'm guilty of it like everybody else, but first responders, when they see a patient, they get very narrow vision.
Right.
And they focus on their task at hand, and they don't, as much as we try to train them otherwise, they don't really look around and see what other dangers are there to themselves and to their patient. And that's not a good idea.
Yeah.
But let's talk a bit about two other quick things. Snow, which I am relearning, if you will. I do, I love snowstorms if I can be in the house and watch out the window and don't have to go outside. But when you have dogs, you have to go outside.
Right.
But I even less I like driving in it. So in any bad weather situation, whether it's wind, snow, rain, whatever, people in California know, and not to say this doesn't happen anywhere else, but it's like they become crazy when it rains. They get weird, and they don't think to slow down.
No.
And that's a problem.
It's like business as usual, right? We're still going. It's raining, but we're still going to drive 80 miles an hour. And what?
Exactly.
Oh, black ice and hydroplaning? How did that ever happen?
Hydroplaning, yeah. What a thing. And know the capabilities of your vehicle. If it isn't a four-wheel drive, don't drive it like it is a four-wheel drive, or don't take it places that you would need a four-wheel drive. If you have winter environment, take tire chains and surprise, know how to use them. You don't want to have to be figuring that out when you're, over the side in a snowbank somewhere.
Yeah, the best is when you see them on the side of the road headed up to Tahoe and they're in their shorts and short sleeve shirts trying to put on chains.
Oh my God. Well, we'll talk more about clothing as we go along here. But one other thing people don't think too much about, and this was one of the things we talked about in our live prepper training here in Denver, lightning. And a lot of people don't understand it, but you can't ever completely eliminate your exposure to lightning when you're outside. And one of the things that our meteorologist Kyle always tells us, if you can hear thunder, you're close enough to be struck by lightning. So if you have to be outside because there was another disaster or there's something else going on, when lightning is occurring, avoid any isolated or tall objects like trees or power poles. For a long time, people thought the best thing to do was to hide under a tree. Not.
No.
Avoid open areas like sports fields where you, in fact, are the tallest object, because that's
right?
where he's going to want to go. So if you can, stay in your vehicle. A lot of people think the rubber on the tires is what protects you, and it actually isn't. But the vehicle itself can, if it strikes close by, it acts like a Faraday cage, if you know what that is.
Yep.
It basically, a Faraday cage blocks electromagnetic fields. So you're safe in your car, not because of the tires, but because you kind of have that confined space that blocks electromagnetic fields to an extent. So
unless it's like a beater and you're in bare feet, right, on the metal.
yeah,
Right.
yeah, exactly. So don't underestimate lightning. We could go through a lot of stories. I have a friend actually who got struck by lightning, and he was a kind of goofy for a few days. We started, calling him. I have to think of that name. Sparky. That's what we're calling him.
Sparky. Yeah, nice.
Yeah,
Yeah, we were at a concert one time, and I forgot my tickets at home. So my mom was bringing me the tickets, and this is in Michigan. It's pouring rain, lightning just crashing, and we're running through a parking lot to go meet her because she can't come in the gates, right? We're like the only thing in the whole parking lot. I'm like, this is not good,
not
man.
Good. You are a lightning rod, right?
Exactly. Luckily, I'm not very tall, so I'd probably choose somebody else. But
Yeah, for someone taller. That's like this friend I was telling you about, and that was in Orlando, Florida. He's about 6'2" or something, and he ended up being a lightning rod. So if you're a tall person, take particular notice of that.
Yeah, right. Walk really hunched down.
Yeah, or get flat on the ground, or get shelter better.
So how about high heat? Because we have some rocking temperatures out here, and the ground gets so hot in and of itself that I couldn't imagine trying to kneel down on it, and you can fry an egg on that ground sometimes.
Mm-hmm. Well, the biggest thing is hydration, and people don't realize, especially as you get older, you don't have the same thirst response, so you don't realize how dehydrated you may be getting. So that's the biggest thing, is hydration and shelter. Have the right clothing for the weather, even if it means long sleeves. It might be uncomfortable, but like we were saying earlier, if you get the right type of clothing that allows you, the heat to dissipate from your body and the moisture as well, that would be really helpful. Be in shelter as much as you can, be in air conditioning as much as you can. But again, we're talking about situations where you're out there helping people and you have no choice but to be in the heat. And that's a big issue for your patient. If you're that hot, the person you're trying to help is going to be that hot.
Right.
And we could do a podcast on, heat injuries, because there's many different levels of them, the worst being heat stroke. So you really need to get that person or yourself out of that environment first and foremost. And into
they call us the kidney stone belt, right, out here. Because everybody, all the guys that are outside working and stuff, not hydrating enough here, they get all these kidney stones and things like that. So
that's what'll happen, yeah, because you're not washing that out of your kidneys. Exactly.
Yeah. And that's what I was thinking, that injured person lying on that ground where you could roast an egg, but they can't get up,
That's a big problem, because despite his injuries, now you got it. I have actually treated people for asphalt burns because they couldn't get up. So that just creates another whole problem. So
on top of it, maybe like a tarp or something. Would you ever
put something under them?
Yeah. Okay.
I would, any shade at all, or taking them from asphalt onto grass, or even better, into a vehicle, or just provide as much shade as you can for them and get them off that asphalt. That's brutal. Even the grass would be better.
Yeah, get them into the vehicle and then assess, or things like that. Maybe you want to.
Exactly.
Yeah, as long as you're not.
You can save someone's life from heat stroke by reversing that immediately. Get them in a vehicle and turn on the air conditioning. People going into heat stroke may not come out of it if you don't do something pretty radical.
And then if we're in a disaster situation where we don't have an ambulance or something like that, then we're talking shade trees, shade them up as fast as you can.
Or have something like an easy up that you can erect quickly, and that will provide some level of change. Say it's an earthquake or something where you can't go back in your house, but you have your prep supplies where you can get to them. Having even the bigger the better, actually, because you may be in it for a while.
Right.
Having an easy up will provide some level of shade. It won't change the heat, but at least you can have some shade. So that would be an easy.
If you had extra water, just pouring water over them, would that help bring their temperature down? Yep.
Absolutely. I would take a garden hose to them if you had that ability. I mean, it's that critical if they're going into heat stroke. And like I say, there's different levels. You have the kind of the crampy situation where they're dehydrated, but they're also losing salt, because it's not just about water. You can overhydrate as well. So it's much, much better to have some sports drinks or something like that provides salt and electrolytes. So you're throwing water in yourself, but now you're all cramping up because your muscles, the electrolytes are out of balance.
Yeah.
So
they sell the Gatorade powder. They
yeah.
sell Gatorade in so you can stock that in your preps, and that way you have it as like that
Absolutely.
emergency item.
And you get a big thing of it because it lasts for a long time, and you can make a lot of Gatorade or whatever it is out of it. And I know firefighters used to carry salt tablets on their engines because of this problem. But they don't do that so much anymore, as they have these kinds of drinks now that they can use. So that makes a big difference. And giving those to someone, it has to be someone though who is conscious enough to drink it. Yes. If someone is altered level of consciousness, you don't want to give them anything by mouth, because they could aspirate it right down into their lungs. So be careful of that. Try the other things first. Try, the water hose, getting them into shade, loosening clothing, all those kinds of things, and maybe they'll come around enough to drink something.
Alrighty, so we got heat, lightning, tornado is going to be wind. Is there any others that you can really think of we should hit on?
Those are most of them, but, preparation is a big thing. And you look at it generally, we talked about some of it, but the bigger things are assure your own safety and that of your family. And this was a big issue that we talk about on our show, because we deal with a lot of first responders, paramedics, hospital folks. And the big fear is, and having been an ambulance company supervisor, I could relate to this, but say there's a big event, an earthquake, which is perfect because it could cover a wide area. We don't want the first responders running off to go home because they're worried about their families, and we don't have anybody to take care of the public. So if you have a preparedness plan for your family, your kids know what to do. Your family knows what to do. They know where the disaster supplies are. They know how to react to a tornado or a earthquake or whatever it may be, a hurricane. You're less concerned about them. And say you're at work and this happens at home. You say you can't get there because of tornadoes, especially because of the fact that the roads might be blocked with whatever, so trees and all kinds of things. It's a danger for you to actually try to make that. But if you know that your family knows what to do and they're safe, and alternate means of communication and all of those kinds of things, you're going to either be okay with, well, I can't leave here right now, or I'm going to do my job here because I can help other people. I know my family's okay. So that's a big one. And having a well-stocked emergency kit. But as someone who's prepared, and that everybody else knows you're prepared, they're going to come to you when they have injuries or they need some help or, whatever. So, it's good to have enough to maybe share with other people.
Right. Overstock.
Exactly. Or just extra stock. But, everybody should have basic first aid training, and the CERT training you're doing is a step above that, because you're learning about dangers, you're learning about, search and rescue and all those other things. But the biggest thing these days, and they have a lot of public training on it, is stopping bleeding. It's called Stop the Bleed program. Yep, and there was a time when tourniquets were not in favor, even in the EMS realm. Because the theory was you're sacrificing the limb for the life, and no. Well, when we went back into war overseas, they did a lot more research on that and realized that wasn't really the case. And I'm not going to get into that long story, but tourniquets can really be a lifesaver. And there are a lot of public programs out there, like I said, called Stop the Bleed, that can teach you how to do that and save someone's life. So that, if you learn nothing else, learn that, because that's the kind of situations you're going to run into.
Yeah, so that's all additional training that we can pick up. Do your basic first aid at a minimum, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then CERT training, the Stop the Bleed program. Is there anything else that you can think of that we could do to really prepare ourselves to act as this first responder? I know of some great websites that have a lot of medical information, but from the first responder point of view, is there anything you can think of on that angle?
Well, you can listen to my podcast because we've discussed those issues many, many times and down to very specific kits that you might. One of the things I want to focus on is having kits in your car.
Yes.
You could be out among them when a disaster strikes. And you may be stuck, I think, always of California and earthquakes. What if you're stuck on a bridge or something and you can't get off of it because it broke?
Right.
What you gonna do? It's 97 degrees outside. You're gonna be in sad shape if you don't have hydration in your car, maybe food in your car. You always want to take, in the ambulance world, if it was down to half a tank, it was empty. You always want to make sure you have gas in your car, if for no other reason than to run the air conditioning if you need to. Conversely, the heater. Having a car kit's one of the most important things you can do, because you never know when you might get stuck.
I have a tiny first aid kit, so it's like, chapstick, first aid, as far as aspirin, Band-Aids, just small stuff. I'd need a lighter, just little things that would help me get home. It's basically just my get home kit. But I think what you're talking about is even a step up from that, like have a bigger supply of those things that you need so you can help out the people around you if you were trained to do so.
Well, we talked about safety issues, even up and say you can't go in your house, it's an earthquake. Shelter, I have a lot of camping equipment that I keep outside the house in the garage. So if the house is for some reason unusable, a tornado ripped through it, and I could still get into the garage, I have all of that. I could live in my back 40 if I had to, because I have everything to cook and the shelter. But as far as the car, very seasonal. Have a window scraper, heavy boots, full snowsuits, hat, gloves. A metal shovel is really important in winter. As well, your medical kit should have extra knit hats because people, especially kids, lose a lot of heat through their heads. You can get those little body warmers, you put them in your gloves. Space blankets are wonderful. They're thin, you can carry them in your pocket, but they are impervious to cold. So you put them around somebody, it's really going to make a huge difference. In the summer, take out the winter things, add a bunch of water, sunscreen, and like you were saying, those electrolyte Gatorade mixes, not just for yourself, but for other people that may not be as prepared as you are. The other big thing is knowledge. Not only knowing the weather hazards that are likely to affect your area, but some of the things we were talking about in terms of training. So those are kind of the big ones.
Awesome.
I remember too the thing I saw, and I think one of the prepper sites called talking about the rule of threes. I don't know if you've heard of that, but
we live by the rule of three.
Okay, so everybody knows that. So you kind of prioritize your seasonal demand.
Go ahead and explain it just in case anybody out there listening doesn't know. We can keep them up to speed.
That's a good point. It's something to be repeated frequently. So You're basically, when you're prioritizing, you're looking at the rules of three. You may be 3 hours without shelter from the elements. What do you need depending on the elements, depending on the temperature? You may be 3 days without drinking water. That's huge. There's many sites that discuss, and I'm sure you've discussed, how much water you need per day per person. You may be 3 weeks without sustaining food. You can live longer without food, but you can't live that long without water, even though I would say you maybe have a little more time with food, depending on what you do have.
Yeah.
And that's a little easier.
You start to get so dingy that it's hard to maintain, your consciousness, basically, in a sane manner without the water. That's why they go 3 days.
And always have in your kit a water filter. Yeah, you mentioned something early on about, that yucky water that you don't want to drink. Well, if that's all you got, at least if you have a good filter, it may not taste good, but you may be able to stay hydrated. If you run out of your cache of water, or somebody's stolen it, or it got destroyed, or whatever it may be, that's an alternative.
Right.
So,
And
like with matches.
I did a good episode with Kevin a couple weeks ago, and we talked about
Yeah.
chemical contaminants and how we can kind of mitigate the dangers there. You know, if you just don't want to be in there in a long-term situation ingesting those chemical contaminants, but usually a little short-term is not that big of a deal. Yeah.
And Kevin knows his stuff when it comes to any wilderness type situation. But, your priorities are always water, have a lot of it, have a filter if you need to get more. Another thing too, like one of the things about an earthquake that I'd want to do, unless, something like the house is coming down, is fill your bathtub. Right. As soon as you think anything's going to happen, fill your bathtub, and it's water you can use for cleaning or doing dishes or drinking if you have to, but it's a lot of water that, you don't have to use your drinking water for those things, and have enough food for at least 3 months for your entire family. And another thing I might add is meds. I'm sure you talked about this in terms of your Go kits. You have an elderly person in your home that aren't going to function well without their heart meds. Get an extra month's prescription at least. Extra eyeglasses. I mean, there's some people that can't see their nose without their glasses. What happens if their glasses break? So those kinds of things.
I always put my old pair of glasses into my go bag, so I just keep rotating them out. Put the old ones someplace else where you might need them one day, and then at least you got them there. Yeah.
And in earthquake country, and I used to teach earthquake preparedness, keep a heavy pair of shoes or boots under your bed. Because the most injuries that people get from earthquakes is people running through the house, oh my God, what's going on? And what are they doing? They're walking through broken glass or, things that have fallen off of shelves. So, the first, you really got to retrain your mind. The first thing I'm going to do is put my boots on. Then I'm going to get my flashlight to make sure I'm not running into something that's going to, hurt me.
Yeah.
So just things like that.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Well, very
so
cool.
That's about it in a nutshell.
Yeah, I think that gives us some great material to feed on, great food for thought. Pardon my pun, but what I do is I just buy a flat of water, and then I keep that flat of water in my car, and then I always have the waters there. And people are like, oh, well, you shouldn't let them get hot and cold, and then hot and cold. Well, I work out a lot, I go through them a lot. But if something happened and you needed that water, are you really going to care that the plastic got hot and cold? No.
And just like all your other disaster supplies, especially food and water, you want to change it out once in a while. And that's, people might put a kit together and forget about it and not even know where it is when they need it. But you find everything in there it just reminds me of a scenario of an ambulance that was treating a bunch of burn patients, and they hadn't used their burn sheets in ever. And they took them out, and they literally turned to dust. And this paramedic started to cry because now she had no burn sheets to put over these poor patients that needed it. So, that's on a whole different scale. But it's the idea that if you don't check your cache and you don't rotate it once in a while, you may have an unpleasant surprise when you need it.
Do that spring cleaning, because there's sometimes you use stuff out of your bag too. And, maybe it doesn't get put back right away or things like that, So you're like, oh, yeah, I got that in my bag, no problem. And then it comes down to you needing that, and it's no longer there. So.
Yeah, where's the bag?
Right?
Or,
Exactly.
critters may get into your stuff, too, if you're not.
Yes.
Put them someplace where your critters aren't going to get into them.
Yeah, absolutely.
And nuts are good. They're full of protein, by the way.
Yeah, trail mix, all kinds of yummy.
Yeah.
All right,
and get stuff, get stuff your kids are going to eat. Don't put stuff in there that they're not interested in.
That's why I go with the trail mix that has the little M&Ms and stuff in it. Yeah, it's like, okay, if you eat the nuts and that good stuff, then you can have the M&Ms too. Oh, okay, all right, right?
That works.
So. All righty, Sam. Well, it was great to have you on today. Why don't you go ahead and just let people know one more time where they can find you, because, they're going to be out there looking for great information, because this is all stuff we need to prepare and get ready, and we got to think about the elements. I mean, if we're in a disaster scenario, we're going to be facing harder things than just watching our loved ones hurt, so it's important.
Exactly, and staying safe in it for yourself and your family and everybody else. But, you're welcome to come over to the disasterpodcast.com website and look at you can see the titles on subjects we've discussed related to this. We also have a Facebook page. You could be invited in because there's a lot of discussion going on there. We have about 600 members in there now that you can share with. And social media under Sam Bradley or Sam Bradley 11, pretty much anywhere you look. And,
awesome.
There you go.
You're easy to find.
Yeah.
So.
I'm not hiding now.
Alrighty, well, thank you very much.
You betcha.
Alrighty, so both the hot and the cold are going to present extreme situations that you need to be aware of. Then also, any kind of precipitation is also going to affect you big time. So Sam had some great tips in there for how to do your job effectively when it comes down to it. So thank you, Sam, so much for coming on the show. I really had a great time getting to know you and meet you, and it was just my honor to host you. Hope to do it a lot in the future because I think you have a lot of information that you could share with us. That would be really, really helpful. Well, that's all I got for you guys today. We're looking forward to, I just love Battle for the South. It is a great book that just keeps rolling at breakneck speed. So really enjoyed writing that book. It's another traveling book, and I'm just having a lot of fun with it. Hopefully we have some reviews that start piling up, and maybe we'll get to do a review time again. That would be great, but we'll just have to wait for that to happen. I got a couple on Battle for the South, but I'm just waiting for a few more to roll in. The other books are doing really well too. So thank you so much for going out there and supporting me. I really appreciate it. I appreciate all the time that you spend with me on the Changing Earth podcast. Until next time, remember, dream, survive, thrive.
Thank you for joining Sara for this episode of the Changing Earth podcast. Don't forget to pick up your copy of Day After Disaster, Without Land, The Walls of Freedom, and Battle for the South at www.author.sarafhathaway.com. If you love Sara's books and this podcast, please head over to Amazon or iTunes and let everyone know by leaving a review.